The best ticket to the middle class in the last 100 years in the state of Ohio and really all over the country has been people making things. The way to create wealth is you either mine it or you grow it or you make it. The presiding officer in his state of Colorado, he understands all of those three things. In Colorado, they mine things, they grow things, they make things as they do in Ohio. Ohio is increasingly becoming an energy state in many ways. We're a leading farm state. It's actually our biggest job, our biggest industry in a sense in Ohio is agriculture. We also are the #3 manufacturing state in the United States of America. Only Texas and California make more things than Ohio does. They're states 2 and 3 times our size in population and an area even more than that. And we know a couple of things. We know that from 2000 to 2010, we lost 1/3 of the manufacturing jobs in this country. We lost more than 5 million manufacturing jobs, just disappeared. Tens of thousands of plant closings, thousands of communities abandoned or crippled, teachers laid off, librarians laid off, police and fire laid off, families broken because of these manufacturing job losses. More than 5 million manufactured jobs lost in manufacturing 2010. Since early 2010, we have now have 500,000 more jobs than we had in early 2010. In other words, for the first time in a decade, we're actually seeing manufacturing job gains in this country. A big part of that is what's happened to the auto industry. I spent much of last week all over my state, but especially visiting places in northern Ohio where manufacturing and especially auto is so important. I talked to business owners who are grateful and enthusiastic about what happened with the auto rescue. The auto industry was literally dying in Ohio and across the country at this point 4 years ago in late 2008, early 2009. And if the United States Congress, the President, and the Senate, House and Senate hadn't stepped in, my state would be in a depression. Since then, we are seeing major investments in many cases, meaning hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, tens of millions minimum, major investments in Ohio in Chrysler, Toledo, major investments in Ohio in GM, major investments in Ohio in Ford, and major investments in Ohio in Honda. All of them understanding the auto industry is alive and well and coming back. But many of these auto suppliers, the companies that make brackets or bolts or wheel covers or glass or a number of other products that ultimately go into auto assembly, many of these manufacturers component manufacturers of parts for the auto industry talk about competing against China. For too long, they tell me, and I recognize China has been manipulating its currency to give Chinese exports an unfair advantage. The Chinese government also gives illegal subsidies to domestic industries, domestic in China, for the purpose of exporting and dumping products in the American market. The term dumping simply means they subsidize it so the product itself is priced under the cost of producing it. It's called dumping it in our market. China, if that wasn't enough, skirted trade law even further by placing illegal duties that affect more than 80% of U.S. auto exports to China, including Ohio-made vehicles like the Jeep assembled in Toledo and Acuras assembled in Marysville. We can't afford to let China take the wind out of our sails. Last week, the administration stepped. The day after Independence Day, the administration announced it would stand up for American workers. It would fight back against China's discriminatory tariffs on American automobiles. When they put illegal under international trade law, when they put illegal tariffs on American products, it means they basically keep prices so high for American-made autos, artificially high, that the Chinese simply won't buy them. Chinese motorists won't buy them. So they, in effect, by these tariffs, have kept American products made by American workers, made in the United States of America, keeping them out of China. We buy so much from China, not hard to find products at any store in America almost, made in China. We buy so many of their products. They do all they can, illegally in many cases, to keep our products out. Now's the time to stand up for American workers, to stand up for suppliers in Dayton who provide aluminum and zinc, for casting, for aluminum and zinc die casting, workers in Defiance, Ohio, who specialize in heavy gauge steel for our domestic auto industry. That's why the president's decision, the United States Trade Representative's decision aimed at defending American jobs, is so important. We know what rescuing the auto industry meant for us. It was not only about preventing crisis, but it could have been an economic depression, especially in the industrial Midwest. Hundreds of thousands of Ohioans depend on the auto industry: workers, suppliers, manufacturers, drivers, truckers, sales representatives, dealerships. For those of us in Congress who supported rescuing the auto industry, doing so meant standing up for the hundreds of thousands of Ohioans and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans, as much as it was about supporting the big three. Today, the domestic auto industry is back on course. GM's a leading car company in the world. It's earning significant profits. As I said, plants in Toledo and Lordstown and Defiance are hiring workers. Honda, Chrysler, Ford, GM have all announced those various multi-million-dollar investments just in Ohio alone, not to mention the many other states that I mentioned earlier. We've got to continue making the investments in manufacturing that matter for our recovery and our economic competitiveness. I was just on a conference call with rural housing advocates in Ohio. We know historically in this country that what leads us out of depression are two things: manufacturing and housing. We're doing significantly better in manufacturing. Remember earlier in my short little talk that we lost 5 million manufacturing jobs from 2000 to 2010. We've gained 500,000 since then, including in Ohio, almost every single month over the last 30 months or so. Their manufacturing is doing its part to pull us out of this recession. We've got to do better in housing. That's a subject for another discussion, but the manufacturing part is so important. One place we must remain vigilant is the enforcement of trade laws. That's what the president's standing up and doing. We know that enforcing trade law isn't just the right thing to do for manufacturing, it's the right thing to do for job creation. The International Trade Commission's ruling in December 2009 led to a measure on imports to support domestic producers of steel pipe like V&M Star Steel in Youngstown. By addressing illegal Chinese trade practices, this decision helped increase demand for domestic production. It played a significant role in V&M Star's decision to do something that people didn't expect would happen anytime soon. V&M Star Steel made a decision to build a new $650 million seamless pipe mill in Youngstown, Ohio, bringing I believe, about 1,000 building trades jobs, building the structure of the plant, and now several hundred jobs as they begin production. A new steel plant in Youngstown, Ohio, one of the major steel producing centers in the country that had come on hard times, particularly in steel. A new steel mill in Youngstown, Ohio, because the President of the United States, because the International Trade Commission, because the Department of Commerce, because Congress pushed for it, actually enforced trade rules, and look what happened. So trade enforcement matters. We also need to be vigilant on currency manipulation. Our trade deficit in auto parts with China grew from about $1 billion 10 years ago to almost $10 billion today. These massive illegal subsidies the Chinese are engaging in are worsened by indirect predatory subsidies like currency manipulation. That's why my legislation, the Currency Exchange and Oversight Reform Act, the largest bipartisan jobs bill that's passed the Senate in the last 2 years, is so important. It got more than 70 votes. Senators in both parties supported it. The House of Representatives had passed a similar measure one other time. Now we're simply asking Speaker Boehner to schedule this bill for a vote. If it's scheduled for a vote, if the House votes on it, they will pass it. I would predict with at least 300 votes, because large numbers of members of both parties want to see the House of Representatives move on this. They voted for it before. We need Speaker Boehner to actually bring it to a vote. It means standing up for American jobs when China cheats. Without aggressive enforcement of trade law, this unlevel playing field will cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs. It's born from the realization the stakes are too high for our workers, our manufacturers, our economy if we don't fight back. We need an all-hands-on-deck approach at the U.S. Trade Rep, at the Department of State, at the Department of Commerce, to be involved and more aggressive, especially by initiating more trade actions. We know that our trade actions stabilize. We know that our actions stabilize the auto industry. We know that enforcement of trade law translates into steel jobs and paper jobs and tire jobs and other jobs. And we know it's time to continue fighting for and investing in American manufacturing. Thank you, Mr. President. I note the absence of a quorum.